Okay, let's start. Okay, welcome everyone. Today we are going to chapter 17 and some of the review. And we have Sashi to start. And then I think we have one more section to finish all the Bhagavad Gita, 18 chapter. We have been through from chapter 1 to today, chapter 17. And the next time will be chapter 18. So Sashi, let's start.
Yeah. So I guess if you guys attended those review sessions in the middle, so obviously we have gone chapter by chapter from the beginning of last year, I think, or almost end of 2 years ago. And so we did the review number one, had to do with how one has to come to a crisis situation to observe the conditionings that we get from society, right, over time, be it the role that we have been given, or be it the sex and like what roles we have to play and all of that stuff, right? So there's a certain conditioning that we are given to follow, and sometimes those can build certain expectations, and things can fall apart when somebody shocks the system, which is what happens sometimes, maybe your family hurts you, or, you're about to, inadvertently do something that might hurt your family member or whoever, right? Or it might not even be family member, it could just be all kinds of war situations that we have going on right now. And it is sometimes mind-boggling as to like why things are happening the way they are happening. And, we try to come up with a reasoning, but it always is confusing as to what is the right thing, what is not the right thing, right? So Arjuna here is facing this problem where he is supposed to fight and possibly kill his grandpa, his brothers on the other side, a lot of his family members. So he's very much confused about it. Um, and
Sashi, you want to enlarge the screen?
oh yeah, that's right.
Yeah, right now, much better.
Yeah. So there is a confusion that he expresses right at the beginning of the thing, right? He says, well, I don't think I want to fight. Don't want to kill anybody. So, life has to bring us to something like this before we can open up to the possibility of something beyond what we see today and feel so real, right? We touch our bodies are real, this wall is real, everything feels so real, right? So for us to understand what is beyond this, something has to shake us up, is my point, right? So the way I see the first 6 chapters, they kind of like start with Arjuna's confusion. What is one to do? What is this action that leads to peace, right? Ultimately, our goal in life is peace, but does that peace come at a cost? And when the cost occurs, does that leave an imprint in our mind, which we might later on question and all that stuff, right? And if you look at where we are in general, we are constantly doing things and we think more money is going to bring us peace and stuff like that. But long term, it does cause a whole bunch of damage. Um, how to see action as offering and sacrifice, right? So one of the suggestions that is made in this chapter 4 is do your action, don't worry about the results. And if that is hard, try to dedicate your action as a offering. Now, you got to put this in the context of when this was possibly written and what society. A lot of it, I mean, all of it is very much relevant even today. But I would say maybe the society was a little more religious back then, possibly not as educated, possibly not so much scientific information, all of that stuff. But there was still a notion of like something that is unknown, is beyond us to explain. And that could fall in the category of God, if you will, right? And for us, we have a lot of scientific explanations for a lot of things. But there are still a lot of things that are very much unknown for us, right? I mean, I could pick off so many things, like, why does a cake taste sweet, and what is that sensation? Like, or a flower that smells in a particular way. Why do we as human beings feel so good about something like that, or some sorrowful situation? Why do we feel like that, right? So some of it, even science can't explain that. I mean, they could come down to chemical reactions and all of that stuff, but there is something beyond that, we have a mind. We get jealous, we get angry, we get sad, we get happy, we fall in love, and all of that stuff happens, right? And that is quite beyond at this point of the realms of science. So here there is a notion of offering sacrifice, and to some extent there is a with Gita, I think the biggest learning here is about how can one become a student in life, right? It's not so much sacrifice in the sense that, you are giving up like $1 million that is coming your way, or $1,000 that is coming your way, or you're just donating a ton of money, as an offering to somebody. That's not what that means, right? How can you see your action as there is a notion of I, which is me, my family, my house, my car, my this, my that, right? So there is this my that keeps expanding, which differentiates me from you. Your car is not mine, so my car is mine. And so there is this distinction that has developed between us. We have these limited boundaries we think is me versus you. So that is something that he is trying to address here, which is Arjuna is saying, oh, this is my grandpa, and I'm going to be fighting in this war, and I'm going to be killing these people. So these people are my people, versus he has fought in the past, and those fightings were probably with people that he did not know. So here is where it is about moha, meaning minus, if you will, right? Meaning the otherness is okay. I could kill the other person, but my person I cannot kill, right? So this notion of I am doing something and I have control over that is what the whole Gita is about, which is this I, which we think is I, this you, meaning me too as well, right? Is something that we have to try to understand, this need for us to kind of have control over a situation. And really, offering and sacrifice means that what happens when you don't have control, right? And in those situations, can you be okay? So whatever action comes your way, when you're trying to offer it, means that you are not owning the doership of it. Suddenly, you don't have to worry about, am I going to profit from this, or am I going to lose something? So that is not going to hurt you, right? So that goes back to the karma yoga that he was talking about in chapter 1 through 6. So this is all about, the first 6 chapters are about, because he is confused about the situation, a crisis has come. It is almost about like, who am I, right? What does this I mean? And what am I supposed to do in this situation? Or for all of us, actually, what does action mean in this world? Ultimately, we want to gain this so-called knowledge, right? the so-called knowledge that Gita talks about is not your science knowledge or outside world knowledge, none of that, right? This is deeper knowledge about when you close your eyes, you know for sure that you exist, right? So that is something that cannot be erased. So what is that? What is that feeling, and why do we get that feeling, right? So that is what they call as the true knowledge, right? But before we get to that real deeper knowledge, we have to kind of go through this phase of looking at our actions and making them actionless. What that means is this I-ness in that action has to be almost um, dissolved. So it is happening because, you have been called on this earth to do some action. Like in this case, Arjuna was a warrior. So the call to action for him was fighting the war. Or for somebody, it might be being a mother. For somebody else, it could be a software engineer, right? So these skills have come to you. One would be proud of their own ability to get there, right? And that's where, in chapter 3, 4, 5, they kind of cover, like, there's a lot of things that happen that bring you to a particular situation. Doesn't mean that this needs to balloon your ego. There is so many elements that play a role into you becoming talented in a certain thing. Now it is your job to serve the society for that particular thing that you have been, you have excelled in your life, right? So that is that actionless action, meaning taking the doership out of your actions. So suddenly you are basically, there is a rise of humbleness, I guess, humility in whatever you're doing. And automatically you have the sense of oneness with other people. So there's no like constant battle with like, this is me and this is you. And that the impact of this limited existence that we tend to have kind of reduces when you go through these first 6 chapters. So as you're doing this, one of the issues with these first 6 things is that it inadvertently, every so often, it might bring you to a point where you might start thinking, oh, look, I don't take credit for this, so I must be good. So it's just the nature of this I that we have that tends to build even the subtlest of the ego, right? And this is where these next 6 chapters kind of play an important role, where what this is talking about is devotion, right? So I meaning you, meaning I, right? So us. What is this? Then there is a lot of unknown. That unknown is something that, it could be all kinds of things for everybody, right? It's your choice to decide, is it Allah, is it Krishna, is it Christ, or whoever? It doesn't really matter. But the point is that when this offering that he talks about up here, when you're just doing this blind, actionless action out in the society, what might make it easier is you identify with a certain notion of a devotion to a deity or a god, right? Something that you want to pin on all the elements that are so much unknown to you. So that what that does is that it will help you make your actions more unbiased in the sense that the devotion element is going to, actually in English it is called as devotion, but if you look at the breakdown of the word bhakti in Indian language or Sanskrit, what it means is, we talked about this limitedness, right? Limitedness means everything is broken, vibhakti. And bhakti means you're trying to bring them together. Now, together here, you start out by saying, let's say you believe in Krishna. So you say, okay, it's Krishna. Krishna is the Lord or God or whatnot, right? Things that I don't understand, it's because of Krishna. So so your basically your whole day, everything that you do It doesn't mean that you have to go live in some monastery or anything. No, in fact, that's why this is such a beautiful book, in the sense that it doesn't want you to leave the world, because they say that this world itself is your nirvana. So this world is where you want to continue doing your actions. Stopping and going away from action is actually not something that is going to help you, because action is not something that is out there. Action is all in here, actually, in our heads. We have become experts. Even if we stop doing something, even if we just go to the mountains, we will be concocting something in our head. So even if Arjuna would have just left the battlefield, he would have carried all the jealousies and anger that he has had with his brothers and towards the society with him to the monastery or wherever he wanted to leave to. So that is the distinction that this book tries to make, is we tend to think about tangible things or things outside us, but really everything is happening in our minds. Everything is happening, even though, yes, there is the physical aspect of the action itself. Um, so, we did talk about, like, there is so many selves, right? I behave in a certain way, maybe with Jason, or I behave in a certain way with my daughter. I behave in a different way with my boss. So all these different selves that we have, identities, if you will, right? That is also a limited identity that we tend to take upon ourselves at a given point of time in a given interaction. That is also us breaking apart, right? We are not one. So this whole thing about this chapter 7 through 12 is an exercise in looking at not only people out there, but also our different mental personas, if you will, in a way, not identifying with them, right? You don't identify with being a father and say, that's it, that is what defines me. No, you're more than that. Or, you're a software engineer. No, that's not it. You're more than a software engineer, right? So all kinds of things like that. So the role that you are playing is just a role. But what you are is more than that, right? So that is this stopping selfing, right? And so the notion of God kind of helps but if you use it in the right way. What has happened over time is that this whole idea of God and devotion has taken really bad turn in our society, right? I mean, people killing each other because of their faiths, being somebody might say something different and stuff like that, right? So religion, rather than bringing us together, has actually made us walk away from each other. And, especially Gita, such a beautiful text written by Hindu scholars, right? But even in India, there is so much caste system, everybody knows about that. But having said that, um, there is caste system even today in our society, right? We see a lot of downtrodden people, who are hurt by so-called, well-to-do people, right? And that happens all the time, and it has happened you know, since humanity has existed. That is one of our flaws, I guess. So there is this notion of me and then the unknown. And now here, what happens is, in this last 6 chapters, if you think about it, right, whatever we are observing out there, there is a image of that in our brains, in our mind, or whatever we hear, we interpret it. Just as I'm trying to tell you something, these are words that you guys are interpreting. So also, what I want to say might not be exactly what my words might be conveying. And then you are interpreting that, right? So we carry our own world, right? So all these unknowns and this so-called known that you have, everything, the mantra, the simple philosophical thing that they have captured in 3 little words, right? You are that. all this unknown that you think is unknown, and everything is you. So the question is, like, what is this you? So here, this is this little me, and then there is this infinite that I don't know of, and I feel like so small in front of that infinite. And here, that little me itself is infinite. And once we understand that, this I, my car, my house, my wife, my sister, my brother, this whole my now expands to the whole planet, right? And the whole universe, if you will. And it suddenly, the burden of existence kind of becomes a little more simpler. And ultimately, most of the religions are trying to teach this in their own way. Um, so he starts in chapter 13, where he tries to break this into like who is the observer and who is being observed, like the battlefield, right? Or the field, or whatever we are responding to out there. And, we just talked about that, right? Whatever we see, whatever we observe, there's an image of that in our head. And that image is biased by, let's say, our memories or our perception of what that is and all of that stuff. So what we see is completely not pure, if you will, right? So it is sort of an impure version of whatever is coming across to us. So we want to understand that distinction, this world, from the perspective of I versus that, or Purusha versus Prakriti, the nature, the field, and the knower or the observer. Then he also covers in chapter 14 the three changes in the observed that influence the observer's action, right? So what happens is there is these properties out there of everything, like a stone. Stone is just sitting, um, you would say lazily, I guess, but it is static, right? So there's no motion per se. And obviously, probably there's no consciousness there. But if you look at an animal, dog, they are moving around, but maybe they don't have the awareness that a human being has, or a plant is static, but there is life there. Flowers grow, flowers come out of it. And then there are humans. Humans can be again, like, everything is now going to be broken down into these three different categories, if you will, right? So there's the Sattva, Rajas, and Tamas. Tamas happens to be the lethargic situation of everything on the planet. And Rajas means something with a lot of momentum, action. We are always doing something. We are moving around here and there. That is, think of it as Rajas, so we are trying to achieve something more and more and more. Sattva means that, there is a certain kind of a satisfactory feeling, and these people tend to be, they're not, the greed is not as much. They're still doing everything, but they're part of the society and all of that stuff. But they are also trying to strive towards this oneness, if you will. The Rajas is always trying to collect a lot of worldly things. Tamas is somebody who just doesn't want to do anything. They've sort of given up on life, if you will, right? So there are these three kinds of categories. And now when you observe this stuff, right, we also tend to take our actions, our body wants to take those actions as a response to some similar kind of a feeling. Sometimes we might feel lethargic, we might feel very active, or we might feel very much like intellectual, like, we want to understand this deeper. We like it so much that, we want to be a student of something. And that is that sattva quality, right? So, but I can observe me being very active or very lethargic or very knowledgeable, right? So again, in chapter 14, he says that all these changes that are happening, you can observe them. So again, don't associate with them so closely, right? Um, there is, so he goes on in chapter 15, where the changes in the observer and the immutable observer, right? So there's not only just like, can I, right from here, I can say, look, I am talking, or I am talking about Gita, and you could say, like, I'm listening to what he is saying, right? But there's also another level of this immutable observer, which is beyond this just us observing ourselves, right? So he makes this distinction between the so-called conscious me, aware of my actions, but even that is happening in a sea of this larger immutable observer, which is the Purushottama, right? And that is the basis of this whole one unified consciousness, if you will, right? My consciousness, your consciousness, everybody, right? We all come out of it in a way. So that is what Hinduism would call as God, right? Um, but obviously, things have changed, and there's like 33 million different gods, I guess, and all that stuff, right? So we Hindus are very much lost, much like every other religion. People, followers are lost because the message, unfortunately, these words can be misinterpreted after the person who is talking about it is gone, because a lot of it is poetry. A lot of it is, how can you talk about something that is beyond us, right? These words come from this first section about I. We are limiting ourselves. We are limiting our language. We are limiting, the moment you give a word to something, you box it, right? The moment I say rose, immediately this beautiful flower comes to your mind. There is no novelty there, in the sense that this is something new, so I can appreciate the beauty. Already the society has told you that this is beautiful. So all of that baggage just immediately pops in your head for a given word. So a lot of these books, Gita and all of these things, they're written at a level which is, one has to peel those layers for oneself. Probably true for any philosophy in general, or any book in general, right? And that peeling of the layer really depends on your level of uh, appreciation, dedication, and the word that Arjuna is going to bring about here in chapter 17 is the so-called Shraddha, or the faith, or trust, right? Um, so that's where we are. So there was plenty more that I wanted to cover here, but maybe we can do some other session to talk about that. But now we will go into chapter 17 directly. Okay. Does anybody have any questions so far? Should we take a pause? No? Everything good so far? uh, all right. Should we go on, Jason?
Yeah, we can continue. Just let me.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So now we are going to talk about chapter 17. So we'll talk about chapter 18 next time. So in chapter 16, there were a couple of things that have happened. If you guys were with me so far, so he covers this thing in chapter 16, where he says, bound by 100 bonds, devoured by wrath and lust, unweariedly occupied in amassing unjust gains, which may serve their enjoyment and the satisfaction of their craving, always they think, right? So he's kind of distinguishing between these two kinds of people, right? One is where they are moving upwards in their inner wealth, if you will, and one who is amassing the wealth that we consider as wealth, which is houses and cars and property and all that stuff, right? So thus occupied by many egoistic ideas, deluded, addicted to the gratification of desire, doing works but doing them wrongly, acting mightily but for themselves, for desire, for enjoyment, not for God in themselves and God in man, right? So we talked about this. So this has nothing to do with the Hindu God, right? It's just a notion of something unknown within me and unknown within you, and that unknown is the same, so which means that if I see somebody else behaving wrongly, one could develop a compassion to understand that it's a human being who is going through something horrible, and I have the same potential to be as bad as this other person, or as good as this other person, which also means that we don't put Buddhas or Krishnas or Christ on pedestal. God within us, meaning this deep unknown within us, we should have the same ability that Buddha had to get to nirvana. It's not about saying Buddha is great. Buddha always said that, right? I mean, he said that, he's not seeking for followers. Yet there's so many followers, right? And, we're going to talk about that in the chapter 17. So the point is not following. The point is you becoming your own Buddha in a way, right? So they're addicted to the gratification of desire, the people who are working towards something, and they fall into the unclean hell of their own evil, right? So there is nobody out there who is going to um, delve out this justice, if you will. There's no like some big guy sitting up there who's going to say, okay, you're going to hell and you're going to heaven, right? So the mere fact that you have spent your time in some greedy action or something, it is going to turn around and you will uh, be in that hell yourself. It might not feel like it, but it's your own journey. They sacrifice and give not in the true order, but from now. Your order doesn't mean Hinduism order or anything like that, right? uh, it just means the true order here means just the balance of nature, right? Whatever comes natural to you. But from a self-regarding ostentation, a lot of it is just show off. Like, look, I gave this $1,000 to this cause and all that stuff, and I need my brick on this wall or whatever, right? For vanity and with a stiff and foolish pride. Now, in this, there is a foundation laid on what drives our actions, right? So we trust in something, we put faith in something, be it towards a desire or a greed, be it towards gaining knowledge or whatnot, right? So, so what Arjuna is asking, but before even we go there, right, what he's asking, I thought this was interesting, right? Over the generations or over all the historical times or evolution as animals became human and all that stuff, right? Um, one Swami kind of asked this question really interesting, which is, you know, whatever this hands and nose and ears that we have developed, it's an evolution wanting to survive, right? And so the fishes became human beings and monkeys and all that stuff, right? And then human beings and all that stuff. So these senses started developing, but this whole development of our consciousness, right, must be a deeper um, necessity of the nature itself to understand this truth, like a tree or even a rock, yet they can't express it, or a dog, they can't express it. So this is nature's evolution where humans have come about. And we are human because we have this question in our mind, deeper question. Now, we might mistake that to something else, which is, hey, like I am going to be safer living in this community, and I need a bigger house here. I need 2 cars, and I need blah, 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 right? So we associate that to why do we do that? Because we want to be happy. Now, a dog doesn't do that, right? I mean, they have their particular thing, and they once their needs are satisfied, they move on. Animals don't do that. Plants take whatever they need, but they are not like hoarding. Humans tend to have that, and we confuse our greed. But there's another way to look at that: is we are basically seeking happiness, and only humans have that ability to feel happy and want more of it, or feel sad and want to get rid of that sorrow, sadness. So this search for the truth is what makes us human. He says evolutionary way to look at it is that this notion of I am feeling within us is actually very unique to humans, right? And that human with that development must be a need for nature to understand itself. And that's why we came about. Yet, many of us go through this, here he talks about gratification of desire. We are still almost kind of behaving animalistically, where we are, I like this food, so I'm going to have more of this food and fill my garage with it or something like that, right? So we are busy in that, right? Trying to understand a layer above it. Um, so the question that gets asked by by Arjuna, after he hears all of this is, when men sacrifice to God or the gods with faith, but abandon the rule of the Shastra, means the science, or, like whatever knowledgeable people have documented that this is how you should live your lives. So he says, what is that concentrated will of devotion in them? Nishtha, meaning internally you feel devoted to something. So which gives them this faith and moves them to this kind of action, right? So we always trust in something, be it like, some XYZ company that you're working for and your actions in that company, because you believe that that is going to gain you more salary or something, right? So he's asking, like, what are those things? What is that devotion, right? We have devotion. It might not be towards God. It might be towards getting a bigger house or something, right? So basically, in nutshell, what he's asking is, what about the folks who are ignorant of Shastra? Now, here, ignorant does not mean derogatory. It really just means that we all sort of fall in that category where we don't seem to have that time to really start questioning, am I beyond just being a father? Am I beyond being a software engineer? We get lost in these roles that the society has put on us, right? And that's why that losing or ignorance or darkness is what they would call it. We don't have the light or enlightenment, right? And so that is that ignorance of Shastra, right? And yet have faith. So what is that faith, right? So there's two kinds of them, right? Material wealth and inner wealth. And typically we are usually born with it, right? We somehow sort of have that innate drive. Sometimes we see that between brothers and sisters too, or between, they talk about the twins, right? Sometimes one person behaves completely different than the other person. And the way Hinduism wants to explain that is, there's something that carries over from our current life over to the next life. Um, and so, yeah. The faith is embodied beings is of triple kind, right? So faith is also of three kinds, it says. And those fall in that category that we talked about, Sattva, Rajas, and Tamas. The faith of each man takes the shape given to it by his stuff of being, right? Whatever he thinks defines him day to day, that drives him towards a certain kind of a faith. Whatever things are happening, if he's making more money, unfortunately, he is going to get dragged back into the world, and he will never have time to kind of be with himself or even question about larger questions of life, right? This Purusha, this soul in man, is as it were made of Shraddha, right? Shraddha, faith happens to be a very loose translation, in my opinion. I think it's a combination of trust and faith. For example, like when you sign up, or when you guys were in 12th grade, you signed up to join a college, right? Many times, maybe it was because of societal pressure. But once you signed up, you wanted to understand the whatever the knowledge was being given to you, and you had a certain trust, a positive understanding of what you're doing, and that it is going to help you in life, right? Now, some might have a negative experience as well with that. But we certainly tend to have this sort of like a positive willingness to learn something that is such unknown, and that is the Shraddha, right? So unfortunately, this word faith has been taken over by the so-called religious fanatics, and it has kind of destroyed the meaning of that. So it's hard to translate this word Shraddha in English. So it's a combination of faith and trust. It's almost like a positive way of looking at a one would think that as a blind faith, but it is blind to the extent that you really don't know what the outcome is, but you know the general direction and you get a sense of it that, oh, this is a good way to do. I mean, it's not something that is going to earn you $1 million suddenly and all that stuff, right? But it is going to clean your inner actions that we talked about, and the outside actions as well will automatically get cleaned in a way. Now, there could be a side effect that people will start loving you, and you could become a CEO of a company, but that's not the goal. The goal is to become a better human being, right? Um, a will to be a belief in itself and existence, and whatever is that will, faith or constituting belief in him, he is that, and that is he. So, okay. So he kind of breaks this down into like three categories, right? Sattvic men offer sacrifice to the gods. What that means is that the sattva, they are engaged in knowledge. This does not mean that, you take like, I don't know, in India, they sometimes take fruits and offer it to God, right? That's not what that means, right? Here, when you are offering sacrifice, meaning that whenever you have a desire to, I don't know, hurt somebody or love somebody or make more money and all of that stuff, right? You immediately separate yourself from that act. You might still continue doing that act, but you will observe yourself. That mere observation is going to give you a better understanding of why you're doing that thing, right? Here is where you're engaged in knowledge of yourself. Did you want to ask a question?
Yeah, question about Rogers.
Yeah.
I think probably go ahead because probably too I raised my hand too early because
Mhm.
uh, on the Sattva and the Rajas, you say engaged in the dynamic pursuit what wealth. I see some other translation they worship the yaksa.
Yeah, it's right here.
Is the
It's
yeah.
coming. It's coming. I'm
Yeah,
going to
the
talk.
reason is I asked this is from the Chinese tradition because the yaksa usually means the some terrible demon or fearful. I'm not sure, my
I will talk about that. I will
yeah,
talk.
yeah, please talk
Right.
about it.
So yeah, so they are in the dynamic pursuit, meaning that they are praying to wealth and power, right? Um, so yaksha in Indian, uh, the what do you call that? The set of gods, they are the keepers of the wealth, as it says here, right? So they are, so these Rajas people are kind of praying for them, praying towards them. Now, there's no temple like that, right, where you're going to find yaksha. But our daily pursuit of somebody who is greedy, he makes $1 million, now he wants to make 10 million, then he wants to make 100 million, right? That continuous pursuit that drives you, right? It's basically you're worshiping yaksha. And the Rakshasic forces, the others, okay. So now he's talking about Tamasic, right? The bottom ones. So, but these people here, they have, let's say, whatever they have, they are not satisfied with it. They are constantly wanting more, wanting more, wanting more. That's the Rajasa. And Yaksha is the keeper of wealth in the sense of like the so-called gods in Hindu mythology. But I mean, all of that is poetic, right? I mean, but the point is that whoever is, one can have a devotion towards wealth. The first one, Sattva, even though he might be making a millions of dollars, but every action he is using it to observe his own inner self, right? I think Krishna falls in this category, right? He himself was a king, and he himself was had many wives, about like thousands of wives or something like that. But back then, the culture was that, after you plunder another nation, you protected those women by bringing them over and you married them. So Krishna is unique in that sense that he's so-called very religious, but he's also very worldly. And he, in fact, is pushing Arjuna to go fight this war. And he considered that actually as non-violence. He has a very nice definition of violence, which really shatters our understanding of what violence means. We only think physical hurt is violence, but that physical hurt is the manifestation that has gone on for possibly for years. The amount of hatred that we send towards each other, be it with our words or whatnot, right? All the differences that we have created between human beings, and then it materializes with somebody picking up a gun and shooting somebody, right? But here in this action, where he is trying to ask Arjuna to follow his understand yourself first, he said, before even taking on this conditioning from the society that wants you to behave in a certain way. So the Rajasas are more about dynamic pursuits, right? Collecting more. The Tamasa, he says, is the Rakshasic forces, meaning Rakshasa are like the demons, or the bad gods, if you will. But they are also, in our living sense, here, these are sort of things that, we're going to see the qualities of Tamasa, where they are attracted towards very elemental powers, like, um, like somebody wants to, so one Swami gives an example of how one guy is considered spiritual because he can keep his arm up in the air for, I don't know, for like years or something. Like the guy has all he has done achievement wise is keeping his hand up in the air. Now that is absolutely rubbish, right? There's nothing that he is adding to the society, nor his own knowledge, but he's hurting his body. So that is that elemental power that he's trying to achieve by feeling powerful because he hasn't moved his hand for so many years, not centuries, but years at least, decades. And they tend to worship grosser spirits, right? Something that is a little more body focused, if you will. Here it is wealth focused. It's almost kind of like mental desire, fulfilling type of a thing. And this one is intellect, right? So that's how you can also see. The bottom is the body, this is the mind, and this is the intellect. The men who perform violent austerities contrary to the Shastra, meaning whatever knowledgeable people have told us, we tend to, these people tend to ignore them, right? With arrogance and egoism, impelled by the force of their desires and passion, right? So that's why you tend to go against them. And when he's talking about Shastra, he is not meaning here that the ritualistic aspect of things, right? Where now people take it that way, right? People read this poetic language and they say, oh, there are certain rituals in these Vedas that, we got to follow this and we got to follow this and we got to bring bananas to this or give this to Lord Ganesha, who's the elephant god, and all that stuff, right? While all of that is good, if you don't peel the layer and try to understand, how is this how is this making me basically humble in front of Lord Ganesha, right? The goal is the humbleness, the humility. And if that is lost on you, then Shastra is lost on you. Like all the teachings have been lost on you. So now you're really pursuing your own ego at that point, right? And unfortunately, Hinduism society has devolved into that, and most religious societies have devolved into that, right? It's basically a ego trip, um, and it's a different kind of a desire and passion, right? Um, so in from 7 to 22, he kind of goes through all kinds of interesting things, and might be worthwhile for you guys to review that on your own, maybe. I thought I had that up here somewhere. Let's see. It's not. Yeah, maybe we can just cover. Oh, there it is. Okay. So he then goes into ascesis, meaning the penance part, right? Meaning, like people do all kinds of crazy things. So in general, the Shraddha is a combination of things, right? One is, we got to keep ourselves nourished.
Can you enlarge the screen?
Yeah. Well, I think you guys are trying to read the bottom part, and you're gonna get be lost, unfortunately. So just be with me. Ideally, you don't want to look at the screen. Otherwise, you guys are doing your own thing in the head and you're not paying attention, right? And part of this is not about what Shashi is saying. It's about what you guys are listening, and let your body be here, right? And this could be a meditation in itself. Let the information come in and it'll stay with you. No need to take notes or anything like that. None of this is something very revolutionary or anything. But there are some interesting things that I have come across, and I have a hard time capturing it in the notes here. Unfortunately, there's too many words, and words are very limiting, as we just said. So Shraddha, as I was saying, right, it's a combination of things that drives us towards a certain faith or a trust. Our need to nourish ourselves. What is our basic needs? What are we willing to sacrifice? Meaning, let's say you're working in an office and you're working on a good project and all that stuff, or maybe you're not working on a good project, but you're getting the salary. Now, you're not growing as much in the company. That itself is a sacrifice from your point of view, right? You're giving up, like somebody else is growing really well in that organization. So there is a little bit of, now here it is a sacrifice only if you are not as concerned about the impact of that. So you're letting go. It's fine. So you're still happy. So sacrifice means giving, but you're still happy in that, right? That is that offering piece. Giving, meaning I have so much that I can make some other person happy as well. And ascesis is basically, I have enjoyed the life that has been given to me, and I can now retire from a little bit of this, like maybe I like to run a lot, right? The runners, right? Okay, maybe my knees are not cooperating with me, so I can give up running. I can take up something else, or there can be all kinds of things, right? Or eating sweets, or eating too much, all that kind of stuff, right? So all of these four elements, he kind of covers them, and he says that this kind of ultimately drives our trust or faith, if you will, in what we do, and that drives our action. So the Sattvic tends to be balanced with the nature. Um, and this goes back to the word dharma, right? Dharma or dhamma that Buddha uses, or Tao uses the way, right? There is a certain way to, or dharma, of everything. It has nothing to do with rituals at all, nor a religion. People tend to translate dharma into religion. Dharma really just means that fire has the property of lighting things or heat. So that is its dharma. And we all are born with a certain dharma, certain quality that we ease into. So if I know that this person is an angry person, if I know ahead of time, or I learn it over time, I will try to work with it. I think, was it Bruce Lee or somebody who said that, it's like the water flowing or something, right? I'm like water or something. I think it's available up there in Google somewhere. It's an interesting quote that he made about water and how he tends to be like, move like water, right? Find your place of stability. That is that balance or harmony with nature. So here the food is balanced, kind of. So he covers a lot of things actually between 17.7 and 22. There is a certain element of fasting. Fasting is not for any gain or anything. This is effectively it is basically saying that my machinery inside my body, I just have a general need to calm it down. Not because I want to appease a certain god, because I'm going to make $1 million or something like that. No, a lot of the fasting in India, tends to be about that, right? A lot of these, now we have so many festivals that are going on, right? Dashera, Diwali is coming up next week. There was a ceremony of a goddess right before the Dashera. A lot of that is all associated towards material wealth. And there is a lot of fasting that happens at different points of time, but then there is also a lot of overeating that happens. But that's true about every other religion too, right? But here, this kind of a person will naturally find their rhythm as to when to eat. And ultimately, that eating has to do with nourishment and calming the mind. Here, the Rajasa, for example, they are eating maybe a lot of protein powder or meat and all that stuff so that they can be strong and go out in the world, right? Fight and make more money or whatnot. And here, there could be people who will force themselves to go into a mode of hunger, right? Or they might go into overindulging. And they're doing this, like we saw earlier, mostly because it's sort of completely ignorant. It's not, they're hurting themselves and they're hurting the society. They're not really adding anything to anybody. So here it is calming the body, is there calming the mind, all of that. And, the word that he defines is yogi. And here it is all about body pleasures, right? I got this much, I want more, I want more, I want more of that. And that is the bhogi. Bhogi means all the worldly pleasures, I want to enjoy them and I want more of it. And here it is, in a way, they are trying to hurt themselves, if you will. Be it, even if they are eating, they might also go into an overindulging type of a mode. But here you might, you might give up something, but mostly because somebody has told you that, if you give up this, it is going to help you longer term. It's not about trying to get better knowledge or mental calm or anything like that. It's more about like, maybe I want to lose fat, or or something of that nature, right? So tyagi means somebody who gives up things, gives up mostly because he wants to gain something out of it. And here he might also give up eating, but it is mostly because he has eaten enough and he's satisfied, and now he is responding to the body's need to calm down the machinery of digestion, internal. Here the energy directs inwards, this is outwards, and this is a lot of wasteful efforts, as we talked about. This is a true nature of Brahmin. Now in India, it has become all about birth, right? If your father was a Brahmin, then you are a Brahmin, and your son is going to be a Brahmin, all that stuff. Now you could be completely ignorant. You might as well just be this person, but you get that societal status, or at least you did in the past, right? But truly what Brahmin means is awareness of that vast that we talked about earlier, where we don't feel this limited this, but everything is one, right? So that feeling, whoever achieves that is the Brahmin. Very few reach that state, right? They're very handful people that we know of, at least, I guess. I mean, we don't even have the ability to understand that, I guess. These people, we revere them, we respect them. This is Kshatriya, right? This is the second class in that 4 classes. They are active in the world and they want more of that. There's one more class, which is the Vaishya. That's what this V is about. And they are all about making more money. In Kshatriya, the warriors, they are amassing more regions, right? Back then people were becoming emperors and they wanted more land and all that stuff, right? So that's what Arjuna was, in a way. And Shudra is the lowest class, if you will, but that's not by birth. Even a Brahmin today could be a Shudra. Whenever you feel very passive, yeah, on a given day, and you're not really doing anything productive, you could be Shudra on that day. Okay, that's what that means. uh, there's also one person explains it as, when we are born as Shudra, because obviously we are very passive. We are a baby. We need help. And, we might do something. We don't know what is the right thing to do. And we might just maybe just overeat chocolates on a given day if mom is not watching, right? That is that wasteful effort. You don't know what is right for you. Now, some people fall in this category for rest of their lives, right? Even adult people behave like this sometimes. And one Swami says that if you really look at people today, majority of us tend to fall in this category. Not quite lethargy in the sense of laziness of doing something, but laziness to understand what is beyond this worldly ness, this inner wealth and all that stuff, right? So we just feel like, oh yeah, that's just meant for old people and or whatnot, right? I mean, it's a religious mumbo jumbo and all that stuff, right? So we don't tend to engage in that. And if at all they are giving to the society, the giving tends to be driven from a need to protect what I have, right? So I might give $1,000 donation because I might get some tax break. And that means I can now save some money that I've earned. So that is the kind of giving that this category of people will tend to do. Here, this is more of the kind of giving where it's almost kind of like an investment, right? So they will donate to a political party, and with a promise that if the party wins, they're going to make way more money, right? So that is the kind of giving that these guys will tend to do. And here, the kind of giving that these people, the balanced people, will want to do is because they feel very, actually the word Aishwarya, or another word for God is Ishwar, meaning you're a luxurious person, not because you have this wealth. It's just this inner state of feeling satisfied. I have enough. I have a lot, right? That feeling is the feeling of God. So they tend to have that, right? I have enough. Like, even if I have $1,000, they feel like they're on the top of the world, and they are willing to share uh, part of it with somebody else, right? And they're not, so that is that share out of joy. So they ascesis is like, giving up something, again, penance and all that stuff. And it is again towards the whatever their the growth of the inner wealth tends to be, right? Not so much worldly goals. Here they're trying to achieve more honors, and here they tend to do things mostly to hurt oneself, right? So anyways, I think if you're interested, you can read through 7 through 22. I tried to capture some notes here, but I think you get a sense of it. Worship given to the Godhead, to the twice born, right? Twice born here means somebody who goes from this stage to this stage where he's still in the world, but then he comes to this stage where now it is about inner wealth. So when you go from worldly wealth to inner wealth, it's as if you've gone through a new birth. So a Brahmin in India, uh, from a ritual or the rites, what happens is, we tend to see people go to monasteries and stuff like that, right? Once you enter the monastery, they tend to get another name, if you will, right? So they're given a different name as if they are reborn. So they have lost their mother and father, and they consider this universe as their mother and father, right? So that's that feeling of that Brahmin. Now you don't have to go to the monastery. You can feel that way here, right? And that's what, giving up your societal roles and all of that, not giving up in the sense that you're running away from them, but identifying with them that, this is what defines me. My fatherhood defines me. My software engineer ing is going to define me, right? Giving that up, which means that even if one day you lose that, you're going to be fine, right? So that's that twice born thing where, so he's talking about worship, right? Worship given to the Godhead, meaning somebody high above you, um, uh, to the twice born, meaning somebody who has gone to the level of being Sattva, right? Um, or to the spiritual guide, like you might say Gautam Buddha is somebody who you consider as a guide. You worship that. To the wise, cleanness, candid dealing, right? So this is, now he's talking about the quality of Sattva people, right? Or how do you work on getting the inner wealth growth? So as you start doing this stuff at the beginning, automatically your actions start becoming cleaner. Your dealings become more candid because you understand that, why are we not candid? We are not candid because we are afraid that we might lose something, we might get killed, or we might, somebody's going to steal us, rob us, and all of that stuff, right? But once we understand that there is another human being on the other side, and I have always been lucky and I'm good and I'm going to stay good, I'm going to be fine, I'm going to be well taken care of, and all that kind of stuff, right? A sense of very secure feeling brings about a certain kind of a compassion towards all of your human beings, right? A fear or an insecure feeling causes you to lock the doors and, build these walls and, create these wars and all that stuff, right? So this is that you go into this mode, you are going to have this notion of candid dealing. Sexual purity. Now, sexual purity just does not mean that not having sex, right? It is just a way of not using that to, for example, rape someone, right? And as you can see, there has been like a rise of that in India, I would say, and avoidance of killing and injury to others. Now, if this type of a behavior drives you to not fight the war, that's okay, right? But Arjuna was saying, I don't want to fight the war because I have heard that me killing these people, all of these people are going to become, their wives are going to become widows, and there's going to be generations of sorrowness for the society and all of that stuff, right? So he gives all kinds of reasons conditioned into his brain by some other people, right? So he was just talking other people's words, which is what we all tend to do, right? I'm talking about somebody like a Swami from whom I might have heard this, right? But it is also kind of helping us to rethink our choices in life, right? In a way, I hope. At least for me, it is, right? This is a journey for myself. Um, so what comes about in this direction is a certain purity and an avoidance of killing and injury to others. Injury can be physical, or most dangerous one is the mental injury, right? Psychological one, are called the ascesis of the body. There is speech causing no trouble to others, true, kind, and beneficial, the study of scripture and all of that stuff. Here, this is an ascesis or giving up of, your speech, right? So there is a level of giving up at a body level, at a speech level, and at a mind level, right? A clear and calm gladness of mind, gentleness, silence, self-control, the purifying of whole temperament is all called the ascesis of mind, right? So anyway, so this is from 14 through 19. And we talked about the giving parts. I just had a slide of that, but I forgot about that. But sort of kind of round this off, I guess, a little bit. We have talked about this, really what we are. If you really think about us, all we are is a layer of words. What are these words? Could be my role in the society, my nature, I'm an angry person, I'm a rich person, I'm a poor person, right? So these are all these, like, civilization has brought about a whole level of vocabulary and words that limit us. So we pretty much immediately associate with a certain word and we say, that's me, right? And that is an ignorant state. That's where we are. We tend to be here, conditioned. Arjuna was here. And that is what, it's fine. Yeah. I mean, that's what civilization, meaning for society to work successfully, we all need to have this layer of words, transactions, so that, we can drive safely, we can talk safely, transact in this world. The society wants us to follow certain laws and ethics and all of that stuff. For a peaceful society, this is good, but it is not going to help you grow. The inner growth is what this whole Gita is about, right? Spiritual awakening and that revolution within us, myself, not in the society. This is not meant to collect more followers or anything like that, definitely, right? But most people tend to use religion for that. So when a shock to this existence happens, that's a wake-up call. And now you go into this, again, if you look at these words, right, what you tend to do when something bad happens is you either try to narrate that situation slightly differently to yourself, which will take you either into a negative spiral or a positive spiral, right? So you look at those situations, you pick a new set of words to define that, change the narrative, and you go about your own way again. So we fail to change. We use that just to diffuse the situation. And then we go back to up here, which is the conditioning and civilization and all that stuff, right? So this shock to the existence has not had a positive impact in us, right? So, and we eventually realize that, okay, I have changed the words for me to get by from this depressing situation right now, but a few months down the road, I again get depressed. So it doesn't really help just by changing the words, right? So in this cycle, after a certain amount of time, you do come to a place where you start wondering, like, what is all this, right? This is what one would call as existential crisis, right? And you're like, okay, I'm done. I can't do this anymore. And you come to this natural way of like, thy will is all. My words are failing at this point. I can't explain this. Thy will be done, right? So when you come to that state of feeling tired of continuously wanting to respond and control the situation, suddenly you have a different enlightenment, if you will, right? Now you can start questioning, can I change my state? Was my original state my choice? Like, somebody hurt me, as maybe my kid hurt me as a father. So the fatherhood got hurt. But being a father, was that my choice? I mean, yes, I had sex and the babies were born, all of that stuff. But part of it was also, a lot of it was social conditioning. And um, and then, I'm constantly trying to change my kids and all that stuff, right? So I'm just giving an example, obviously, here. Can the other change, though? Like, can you actually change the other person? This goes back to the Stoics, right? You can't really change the other person. So now what happens is you start developing empathy for human condition, meaning empathy for yourself, which is you feel lost, that there is an existential crisis, but you also develop an empathy for that other person who is trying to hurt you. Now that is a good state to be in, right? The compassion dawns in. Now you're in this all are one. This is those next 7 chapters, right? 6 chapters. And then amness, which is isness. It's accepting every situation. Now suddenly all the blows of lives are going to be softer. And this is that divineness, right? Divine, again, one of those words that have completely lost the meaning on the society. All it means is you're not into the negative spiral of where your mind is taking you. You're rising above, right? Um, uh, and every action that you're doing, now suddenly becomes joyous. And this is what he was talking about in chapter 2. But the whole Gita goes on through chapter 17 and 18 because even we can't really understand what he means by action itself brings joy. We associate action with the result, how much money am I going to make off of this or all that kind of stuff, right? But he says right up front in chapter 2, 47th verse, he says that results depend on so many things and it's beyond our control. So if you're going to be stuck with results, you're always going to be sad. So then he gives us this formula in a way in chapter 17, 23 to 26. This is probably my last slide. The Om Tat Sat, right, is the triple definition of this so-called Brahmin, this Sattvic being that we talked about, right, by whom the Brahmanas, the Vedas, and sacrifices were created of old. Very poetic here, right? But these were taken very literally, and there was all kinds of weird rituals that came about, be it in Hinduism, be it in anywhere, right? But we'll talk about what this means. Remember what I just spoke about, the words. All these words bring about a certain baggage with it. Like I said, rose brings its own baggage. So how can we rise above all these words that tend to be so potent, right? If you will, like we can't really understand truly what is beyond the words if the words are presented to us. So there is this, Krishna talks about Om. Om doesn't mean anything. Om is just a symbol. Om really just means a-u-ma, meaning that when you say Om, that sound that comes from your guts is traveling up and your lips close with ma. All the words are basically this motion of our mouth, right? So basically words arise from this one word, Om. So here it is about unification of so many distinctness that we see around us, right? The limitedness, but there is this unity in this word, Om. Um, so it's interesting, right? I kind of ponder on this word, world. World has so many different ways to understand. World can also mean world, meaning whirling, going round and round, which is the samsara in Hinduism. But world is also so close to this the name word, because really the world is the words. It's not yes, there is the physical aspect of it, but what we are guided by is our judging of this physical aspect. It's not the physical aspect that is hurting us. Yes, there might be a physical hurt, but the mental judgment of what you're seeing destroys us already, right? Ahead of the actual physical destruction. So I really like how they might have chosen this name world to denote the physical side of things, but world here also means the psychological world that we carry within ourselves. So here he says that Om is one thing. Therefore, with the pronunciation of Om, the acts of sacrifice, giving, and ascesis as laid down in the rules are always commenced by the knowers of Brahman. What that means is that there's a lot of ceremonies that start in India where they say Om, blah, 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 Om, something or the other. Now, the way I want to interpret this is that whenever, whatever action you're doing as a Brahmin, we all can be Brahmin. It's not just a certain people who are born by birth, right? So what that means is, how can we look at the words without judgment? Pronunciation of Om really is an internal pronunciation, right? These words are coming from a non-judgmental understanding of that is coming at a non-judgmental level, meaning that you want to remind yourself every time you're hearing something of this Om, meaning that you're not taking the immediate conditional meaning of what is coming across to you. Now that involves a lot of work on yourself, right? You got to give up, sacrifice the, immediate response to a certain, like when I say rose, immediately, oh, that's pretty. And that's going to smell nice, right? So you want to give up on that is what this is saying, right? Immediately don't have that baggage impact your decision making. That's how I see it, right? Then he says tat, means with the pronunciation of tat and without the desire of fruit, are performed the various acts of sacrifice, asks and giving by the seekers of liberation. So here, right, what this means is seekers of liberation, meaning all of us actually, right? We think making more money is liberating. But ultimately, the goal is liberation, right? And that is that moksha, which is also the title of chapter 18, which is also the journey of the spiritual journey in the Eastern cultures, right? The ultimate step is the liberation. And that seeker of liberation has to come from this notion of tat. We took care of the words so that they are not going to be biased, but also this physical thing. When you look at a person, when I look at Jason, for example, or when I look at my daughter, when I look at my boss, right? Whatever it brings to you immediately, that is a layer in itself, right? You might have a certain desire, you might have certain fears or some judgments, but what you want to do is you want to look at everything that is coming to you without those layers, meaning that unknown, right? We talked about that. There is an I, but there is an unknown that is driving all of us, which is the immutable observer. That is in all of us. Me, Jason, daughter, my boss, somebody who's hurting me, somebody who loves me, all of that stuff, right? So all of that, if we can, pronunciation of tat here really means internally, when you observe something, you say tat, meaning we are the same in a way, right? And sat. Sat means good, and it means existence. Everything is existing, be it a rock, be it a dirty little pond or a beautiful mountain, right? Word sat is used in the sense of good work. For all good works, prepare the soul for the higher reality of our being. All of this is very, very poetic, right? We tend to take this in a very literal sense. And Sat tends to mean a lot of things in ritualistic societies in India, where they do a lot of religious stuff around this. But really, all it means is that in our day-to-day actions, the reality is existence, right? I mean, this wall exists, this laptop exists, this thing exists, right? It should bring about this level of understanding that we all exist. There's something common between all of us. And if we can stop the judgment of the words, stop the judgment of whatever the mind wants to tell us about a certain role in the society that other person or other thing is playing because of the baggage that it brings about, you are now moving in the right direction. That right direction is the inner truth. right? And if you think about what truth really means from Gita or Hinduism point of view, is something that lasts forever. What lasts forever is this feeling that I am. That lasts forever, right? Your body is going to die. Whatever is physical that you say, I know, is always going to become an unknown. Maybe it takes a longer time, but it is going to go away. That is asat, right? Much like sat, there is an asat. So sat means something that always isness, right? And sat can also mean truth, right? But truth, as we know it, we only think truth meaning an opposite of lie. But here it means real and unreal. Now, what we think as real is this something that we can touch. But here, what Hinduism wants to say, what is real, is something that exists forever. Whatever you can touch is going to go away. So, in that sense, it is an asat, unreal, right? Um, and once we are aware, right, it can be quite liberating when we are aware of this oneness between everything, be it a rock, plant, animal, us, good, bad, ugly, whatnot, right? Everything is an element of God or this existence, if you will. And that only us aware people consciousness can utilize that for our inner growth. That is that chitta, awareness, right? And what comes about out of this is a general level of bliss or liberation. This is not the happiness that you get when you're drinking some wine or something, right? That's different. This is a general inner sense of calm, peace, anand, right? And that is that is the third word, right? So Om Tat Sat. That's the formula. This is almost like E equals MC squared, right? He's giving here. Um, all firm abiding in sacrifice, giving, and ascesis, right? All firm meaning everything in this world, right? Abiding or my existence. And all works done with that central view, this central view, no judgment, right? Everything is the same. That's how I do my actions. As sacrifice, as giving, as ascesis, or sat, for they build the basis for the highest truth of our spirit. Whatever is wrought without faith, whatever we do without this understanding, be it charity, be it good things, be it bad things, it doesn't really matter. Oblation, giving, ascesis, other work, everything is asat. Everything is bad, he says, for the society. If we don't have this understanding of oneness, and guess what? We all fall in this category, if you will, to some extent. So he is drawing a very stark distinction between like what brings you peace will eventually bring peace for everybody. But if you are not peaceful, you're always, no matter how many good things you do, you're going to bring about horrible things on this planet, right? So anyways, I think that's the last of it. Yeah, it is the same thing, we talked about this. So yeah, anyways, that's it.
Okay, let's stop here.
Yeah, so we lost a
Thank
bunch
you. We finished
a bit early.
chapter 17.
Yeah.
Let me stop the recording.